Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
For the first time in a very long time, the New York Jets have some legit reasons for optimism, and it might not be the reasons that you think. We'll take a look at gangrene and talk with longtime beat reporter Rich Cimini on this edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome in, fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports, episode number 33, lucky number 33. I actually don't know if 33 is actually lucky. This time it is, though. And look, we got plenty to discuss today on this edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Starting to look ahead to the NFL season, right? A couple of episodes ago, we discussed about the New York Giants. I don't have a lot of optimism for them. Today, I want to get into the New York Jets, who I do actually have some optimism about. All right, but before I do, please hit that subscribe button, like the episode, rate the episode, whatever platform you're listening or watching on, please hit a couple of buttons. It really does help us out. All right, so the New York Jets, 2025. We will talk it over coming up in a little bit with longtime Jets beat reporter Rich Cimini, who has seen the good. He's also seen plenty of the bad, and I think this year has a chance to be a good season for the New York Jets. Now, I will preface everything that I say on this episode with the fact that I hate the Jets. I am a bona fide Jet hater. I hate them with every fiber of my being. If they put the last 5 seasons on DVD, I would wear that DVD series out. The Jets have been so bad. You had to see them to believe them. And on Sundays, a lot of times I would find myself cackling over their lowlights, and it was just hysterical. Funnier than any sitcom you could ever imagine. Unfortunately for me, though, I think that the laughing is going to be over. Now, first, let's define what success or optimism actually means. It's easy to have optimism when you hire a new head coach. Just about every time the Jets have hired a new head coach over the last 20 years, fans have been generally optimistic. They think this is the thing that's going to get them turned around. The one exception would be Adam Gase. Nobody was happy about the Adam Gase hiring, and the fans who hated that move, they absolutely nailed it. From that opening press conference, it was the eyes, right? The memes from that. And the worst part of it was not even the press conference, was the games. You know, as bad as that press conference was, the games, they were hard on the eyes. You might have heard the term win the press conference. That, I think, is generally a bunch of nonsense. But you can lose the press conference, and Adam Gase absolutely lost that first press conference like 72-0. It was bad. But my reason for optimism with the Jets this year is not that they've just hired a new head coach or that Aaron Glenn is for sure the answer, but I like the fact that the guy has been around the block, right? He has an idea of what New York is like. He has an idea of what he's getting himself into with the Jets organization. He played for a coach who was successful here and was part of the turnaround in Bill Parcells. Now, look, you don't know what you don't know when you're starting something new as being a head coach. But in terms of being as ready as you can be, I think Aaron Glenn has that going for him. Now, could he also be a disaster? That is a possibility. I think a coach can fail for reasons outside of his control, just like a quarterback can fail for outside the influences, right? The offensive line's not right, or the weapons are not right, dysfunctional coaching, whatever. And with dysfunctional organizations, there's that dysfunction that we can see and gets reported, but a lot of times behind the scenes, it's even worse, right? It's Game of Thrones behind the scenes. So maybe that's been all cleared out now. Maybe, though it might only be a couple of months before we're hearing about Brett Johnson coaching from the sidelines or making calls to players. Who knows? But the big takeaway is we'll find out not just how good a coach Aaron Glenn is, but we're also going to find out how bad a head coach Robert Saleh really was. Now, I think we know, but part of the Parcells turnaround was not just how good he was, it was how bad Rich Kotite was before him. The NFL is a coaching league, and the Jets have maybe the greatest illustration of what a terrible head coach to a great head coach looks like. That the coach type was 1 win, Parcells was 9 wins, and with a lot of the same pieces. So part of the reason that Robert Saleh was a failure, I think, was because of a lot of things outside of his control. But we also thought of him as a failure because of the roster and the talent that he had, or at least the talent we think, right? Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and the offensive line and Will McDonald and Jermaine John. We now get to find out. It certainly seems like the Jets got the least out of the talent at their disposal. That's possible. But if another bright head coach comes in here, or a head coaching prospect comes in here and also fails, maybe the talent is not as good as we think it is. Or perhaps it's the outside stuff that remains, even if Aaron Rodgers is no longer here. Now, so am I convinced that Aaron Glenn is going to be the answer? Of course not. This is the Jets we're talking about. And it's an organization that just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, right? Hiring first-time head coaches, generally from the defensive side of the ball. Plus, it's not like Aaron Glenn's Lions defenses were awesome. In scoring under the 4 years that he was there, they were 31st, 28th, 23rd, and 7th. So that shows progress. It's part of a turnaround. But it's also that same defense gave up, 45 points to a rookie quarterback in the divisional round? So there are zero guarantees. But at least I think he gets the chance to prove that he is a better head coach in Robert Saleh. And we should be able to see that right away. I don't know if he's the right long-term solution, but I'd like to think in year 1 we'll know he's a better head coach than Robert Saleh. All right, so another reason why I'm optimistic about the Jets, a couple. A, they can't be any worse, right? I mean, they've not won 8 games in a decade. 8 wins would be a successful year. They've not made the playoffs in 15 years. They're not going to make it this year either, I don't think. So that should not happen in the NFL. The next longest playoff drought in the NFL is 7. That's half the amount of times. Jets have missed it 14 in a row. So the Jets are closer to the all-time record for missing the playoffs consecutively. That's more than just a routine bad stretch of a franchise. So I think I have a healthy expectation, and I think that's the first key, right? I would not think playoffs this year, although it's possible. I wouldn't think 10 wins, at least not going in. It's easy to get carried away. I heard a fan the other day on the radio saying that, I know that the Jets have the right head coach because I watched the preseason game. That's Looney Tunes. The first thing you have to have some real optimism is healthy expectations. 7 wins, that's a healthy expectation. You can win more than that, maybe, but that's the first year of a baseline of a productive organization getting things turned around. The Jets had very unhealthy expectations the last few years. The Aaron Rodgers move was to get to or to win a Super Bowl. The Hassan Reddick move, that was the final piece you thought. That's the type of move that is to a playoff or Super Bowl team, and that was a disaster. So the first step to a turnaround, I think, is just having a far easier bar to clear, and that should be the goal for this season. And if you can't clear that, then what else is new, right? I think that that's a fair expectation to have, 7 wins. And the Jets have a couple of things that should lead to their most productive season in a very long time. First off, the biggest part, the offensive line. The Jets' offensive line has got to be solved by now. No team in the history of the world has sunk more resources into an offensive line than the Jets. Over the last 6 drafts, they have taken 8 draft picks on O-line, including 3 tackles and 3 second-round picks. It has now got to be fixed. Not could be, maybe, it must be fixed. And I get it. Like most construction projects, it took way too long and cost way too much. But now it's got to work. And if that is still an issue in any way, I take everything else I'm saying on this podcast episode back. So in the NFL, if you don't have an offensive line, and Jet fans know this, you can't do anything. Now, if you're a good team with a great quarterback, you might be able to mask it for a little while. But it's no surprise that even the great Patrick Mahomes lost 2 Super Bowls because he was getting eaten alive behind an offensive line that could not keep him standing upright. So the Jets should have a strong offensive line. And on the other side of the ball, they should be able to get after the quarterback. Now, if you're able to do those 2 things well, you should be able to win some games. And the Jets should be able to do those 2 things. Now, they have other talents. They think they have a shutdown quarter in Sauce Gardner they've just paid a ton of money to. They've got some weapons on offense. This is not a barren talent cupboard like many teams that are starting with a new head coach. The Jets should have been better the last few years, at least on paper. That's what we think going in, and that's part of the reason why I think I have optimism about them this year. Now, I wouldn't say that everything's perfect or it's everything that I would want. I think a big part of the thing that's holding me back is I'm not a believer in Justin Fields. Justin Fields is now on his third team in 3 years. The Steelers are so desperate for a quarterback, they let Fields leave so they could sign Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old. All the things that Jet fans are saying about Justin Fields right now, two other fan bases convinced themselves of all the same things over the last couple of years. So I think the quarterback is an issue, and that's a big one, right? But I do think that this is not just Fields' third team or third chance. This is his last chance. If he's not able to make this work with the Jets, his career is essentially over as a starting quarterback. But it's hard for me to believe, maybe this is just the last 15 years, that the Jets are the team that's going to find the quarterback on the scrap heap and unlock his potential. I mean, that seems pretty far-fetched. That seems unhealthy expectations. The Jets are the team that puts the quarterback on the scrap heap, not the one that takes him off. And Fields, look, there's reasons to like him. He's still, 26? He's got a strong arm. He can make plays with his feet. But since he came into the league as a first-round pick, he's 29th out of 34 quarterbacks in total QBR. And he doesn't anticipate well. He hangs onto the ball way too long. But I guess the good news is you get to find out about him because it's his job. There's no reason why Tyrod Taylor is starting. If Tyrod Taylor is starting at any point for the Jets this year, we have our answer on Fields. And you look at Fields last year and you think, well, it wasn't so bad, right? But then you realize he was benched basically the instant that Mike Tomlin could turn to Russell Wilson and plug him into the starting lineup. So you know the deal with Fields. His warts are well known by this point. He can make plays with his feet and not a whole lot else. And that's a problem. But look, I think the Jets are going about this in the right way in most areas. Not everything. You can't do everything all at once. And if you try, you're probably going to fail at more things than you're successful at. But you look at the Jets, they've got one good team in their division. Their schedule is not brutal. They get Aaron Rodgers a crack at him week 1. They've got enough talent. You should be a functional NFL team. And that might not sound like a lot, but given where the Jets have been the last decade and a half, that is light years in the right direction. All right, now we're talking with, of course, the great Rich Cimini. Has covered the Jets for years, host of the Flight Deck podcast as well. Rich, thanks for giving us a few minutes.
My pleasure, Gordon. Good to be with you.
All right, you've been through a lot of training camps with the Jets, some good, some not. What has been the overall tone this year under new head coach Aaron Glenn?
Well, it's been quiet. I mean, we've been used to Aaron Rodgers the last couple of years, so the noise has died down a little bit, and that's just the way Aaron Glenn wants it. I mean, he said earlier in the offseason that we want to move in silence, so I think that's going according to plan. It's been a dramatically different camp than last year, Gordon. I mean, just the practices are much more physical. They actually did tackling, and I know people are saying, well, it's football. They're supposed to tackle, but we know in the NFL, they don't really do live tackling in training camp. The Jets have done some of that. It's just been a different mentality, a little more intense. The coach will get in a player's face now if he screws up. You saw it on the game the other night in Green Bay. After a penalty, Glenn got really fired up on the sideline. So that's something different. So I think just a completely different vibe around the team.
Yeah, and it seems like, generally when you have a tough year and a tough stretch like the Jets have had, you want the coach to be the opposite of the previous guy. Has Aaron Glenn been the opposite of Robert Saleh?
In every way imaginable. Yeah, teams always do that. It's like the pendulum swings back and forth. You go from the disciplinarian to the player's coach, and if that doesn't work, you go back the other way. The Jets have been doing that pendulum for probably 50 years. But, he's very different from Saleh. He's more gruff. I mean, I think people see that in the press conferences. He can be a little bit he gets a little prickly in the press conferences. There's a little edge to Aaron Glenn, and I think it's not an act. I think that's just who he is. He can be that way with the players too. And you never saw Saleh get in the player's face on the sideline. That's one thing I know that drove fans crazy. I think people tend to overreact to that. Every coach has a different style, but you saw Aaron Glenn's style on Saturday night in Green Bay when Marcelino McCrary Ball came off the field after a dumb penalty. He let him have it. And so I think that got the fans fired up a little bit. So, yeah, just different ends of the spectrum with Saleh and Glenn.
Now, you've been there a long time. You've been there for Parcells. A lot of people make that connection because he played for Parcells. Do you see that connection in the way that Aaron Glenn carries himself?
No doubt. I mean, it's just the some of the old school coaching, the fundamentals, the tackling, the the sense of humor, the way he sees football, the way he's trying to build a roster, just like I said, the edge, that gruff side. Parcells famous for having that gruff. I mean, I've been on the receiving end of some Parcells lasers in press conferences for sure. And Glenn, he won't hold back if he doesn't like a question or he doesn't like your tone or approach. He will go back at you. So and it's not just me saying this, Gordon. I mean, some of the Jet alums were in camp last week, guys like Kevin Mawai and Ray Mickens, and they all played for Parcells. And we asked them about the same question you just asked me, and they said absolutely. They hear. I think one of the players said Glenn is Parcells-esque. So I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, do the Jets do that? Bring back the former players every year, and has there been do they see a difference in the way things are going, or has it been the same?
They don't. I mean, not in an organized fashion. Like players will show up, on their own throughout training camp. This was an organized effort by the team to bring back some of Aaron Glenn's teammates. And, of course, there was some public relations involved as well. They made a few of the players available. It was good to see a lot of those guys from the late 80s, early 2000s teams. And, and they do see a difference. Ray Mickens, who comes every couple of years, guys like, Kevin Mawai hadn't been around in a while, but like Victor Green, he pops in every couple of years, and he said he noticed a dramatic difference. Of course, they're a little biased. They're very close with Aaron Glenn, and they're rooting for him. I think it's kind of cool that the Jets hired a former player because and now they have the alumni kind of behind them. For years, I thought the Jets, really, shortchanged their alumni. They never really embraced them as much as other teams do, and now they seem to be doing that.
All right, let's get to the quarterback. Obviously, Justin Fields in the preseason opener looked great. We've heard reports about him struggling in camp. What have you seen, and what have been those struggles, if there have been there?
Well, there have been struggles. I mean, I've watched every practice, and he's had, he had 3 in a row last week that were just not good. I mean, struggling to find his receivers. His accuracy was off. He tends to hold the ball a little too long. And then the other night, I thought he played, smart. I mean, there was nothing extraordinary that he did. They did have some deep passes called, some deep shots on 2 of those 3 completions, and it wasn't there. So he just took the check down, and they got some good chunk yardage, which I thought was really good because one of the knocks on Fields is that he doesn't get through his progressions very well. So there you saw an example of him getting through his progressions, going from the deep shot to the underneath guy. And of course we saw the running ability. I mean, that's his quote unquote superpower. No one ever doubted that, but you saw him break a tackle, get out of the pocket and score on that 13-yard touchdown. They know he can do that. That will be part of this offense. They'll run a lot of RPOs and stuff like that. But I thought it was a good first step for Justin Fields. Now, he didn't get the ball on the perimeter to any of his receivers. So that's the next step you want to see.
What is their vision for him? I mean, do they look at him as he's the answer there? I mean, they obviously have Tyrod Taylor as well. So if things go wrong, he's a guy who's been banged up a lot in his career with that running ability. Where do the Jets see Justin Fields? Do they feel like they have their quarterback, or is this still wait and see?
They feel like they have their quarterback for 2025. I mean, they are all in on Justin Fields. I mean, they give him $30 million guaranteed. That is no small amount. So he's their guy. I mean, it would have to be a prolonged slump for them to move off of Justin Fields. I think one of their goals this year, and this is unspoken, they won't say this, but I mean, I don't think they see themselves as a playoff team this year. So one of the goals this year is to get a definitive answer on Justin Fields, whether he can be their long-term answer. So they're going to exhaust every measure to try to get that answer. And they feel very confident in Tyrod. Now he's been slowed by that knee injury. It is not a serious injury. I suspect he'll be back in practice tomorrow. But yeah, they're going to let Fields ride it out and see what happens. I mean, is he their long-term guy? Personally, I kind of doubt it. He just doesn't have the track record to support that right now, but you never know. We've seen quarterbacks break out like Sam Darnold, and Geno Smith was a late blossoming quarterback, so you never know.
Offensive line. You think about I'm sure the amount of time you have written about the Jets' offensive line over the last decade. Is the offensive line, with the resources that they have sunk into it, do you think the offensive line is now solved at least?
Yeah, you talk about resources. First round pick at left tackle, first round pick at right tackle, first round pick at right guard, second round pick at center. And so you would think that they finally got it right. It was certainly promising the other night. John Simpson, the left guard, didn't play, but Joe Tippmann did a really good job at left guard. He had one of the key blocks on that Braylon Allen 14-yard run. So it is a young, promising offensive line. Are they there yet? No. I think there'll be some growing pains along the way. Membu is very young. Now, he looked good the other night, but he's a very young player. There'll be some growing pains, some learning curve, but he's penciled in. He's not penciled in. He's inked in at right tackle. He's their guy at right tackle. I think he's got a lot of potential. So this could be, by midseason, if they stay healthy, this could be a really good offensive line. And you're right, Gordon. They've been trying for years. Joe Douglas, that was one of the first things he said, right, when he got the job, is we're going to build an offensive line. And his first pick was Mekhi Becton, which, look, Mekhi won. God bless him. He won a Super Bowl ring with the Eagles, but he didn't play great for the Jets, and they had to move on from him. So maybe after all these years of trying, they got it right.
All right, some of the skills positions that they've got. Garrett Wilson signed, so he's here long term. What's the outlook for that second wide receiver? Where is that battle at right now?
Yeah, this is a problem right now. I thought they didn't do a great job in the offseason of giving Justin Fields the weapons he needs. Right now, if they start, Josh Reynolds is the number 2 wide receiver, well-traveled guy. Of course, they know him from Detroit. He knows this offense, so that gives him a little bit of a leg up. But I think he's a limited guy. He's a marginal wide receiver in the NFL, not a number 2. Alan Lazard now dealing with a shoulder injury. He had his right arm in a sling after the game. That's never a good thing. I don't know what the prognosis is, but it could be serious. And so there's your number 3 receiver possibly out. I think they got to go out and get a veteran personally. They have some young guys they're looking at, like Arian Smith and Xavier Gibson's been around a couple of years. Malachi Corley, I don't even think is going to make the team, which is, I think it's going to be, there's a wasted 3rd-round pick from last year. So they need to go out and get a veteran, especially if this Lazard injury is long-term.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about Smith in the draft. What does he look like in camp so far?
Well, he's fast. I mean, that's not earth-shattering news there. He's like a 4.3 guy in the 40. He's looked good in camp. He came in, he had the drop issues in college, well documented, but I think I've seen him only drop 1 so far in training camp. The other night, I don't know if he had a catch the other night. I know he had a couple of opportunities. He was open on a go ball, but Martinez, the backup, overthrew him, which is really hard to do with that guy's speed. But he will be on the team. He will be on the game day roster. He will be one of the 46. He's a gadget player. They can get him the ball on a jet sweep. They can throw him vertical. And he plays special teams, which is unusual for Jets receivers. Most of those guys don't play specials, so he will be dressing on game day.
As far as the offense, the connection to Detroit is obvious with not only the head coach but the offensive coordinator. Do you expect the Jets offense to look very similar in terms of approach to the Lions offense, or do you expect, based on the weapon, especially their quarterback, do you expect it to look different?
It's going to look different. I think the main philosophy will be the same, is that they want to play through their offensive line and be a running physical team, but it's going to look different. They're going to run the ball differently than the Lions run it. I mean, two dramatically different quarterbacks. I don't think you could get quarterbacks as different as Jared Goff and Justin Fields. I mean, Goff is a statue. He's a really good quarterback, but he is the quintessential pocket passer. Whereas you have Fields, they'll be running a lot of RPOs just to try to take advantage of what he can do with his legs. So it's going to look different. I think some of the concepts, the route concepts will be the same. And they don't have as many weapons on the outside as Detroit either. Also, Detroit has, Laporta, the tight end, is really good. The Jets are hoping Mason Taylor can be that guy, but he's been out a week. Actually, it's been a little longer than a week with a high ankle sprain, so he might be down a little bit longer. Certainly, a big setback for him. So, Tanner Engstrand coming from Detroit. So I think there'll be a lot. The players tell me that they're always watching Detroit tape to look at specific players and schemes, so that it'll have a Detroit, I don't know, it'll have a flavor, but it won't taste like Detroit, if that makes any sense.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You talked about Mason Taylor. That was a pick that a lot of Jet fans liked. Good lineage, obviously, from his family. Where did you think he's at, and how far behind now because of this injury do you think he is at as a rookie?
Yeah, unfortunately, that the injury, he's been out. I think it's been about 10 days. He got hurt in that scrimmage a little over a week ago. So, it really sets him back. He was going to be, or is going to be, a major part of this offense. You could just see it in practice. He's out there with the ones. He's doing all the passing stuff. They've been more impressed with his blocking. They said he's a better blocker than was advertised. So, he's like you said, he's got the lineage. His dad, of course, a Hall of Famer, his uncle, a Hall of Famer. So I don't think it's too big for him. He's been around the game his entire life. Now the question is getting him back on the field and getting him up to speed. It really hurts his chances of being a factor early in the season.
All right, so Jermaine Johnson got off the PUP list. He's kind of moving in the right direction. What are the next steps for him, and do you think he will be good to go by week 1, or is it going to take a little longer than that?
Yeah, he'll be ready. He'll be out there against the Steelers in week 1 at MetLife. This has been part of their plan. They had a very detailed plan structured to get him ready for week 1. So he's coming off PUP right when they planned him to. So, training camp is pretty much over at this point. So he's not going to get those kind of practices, but they're going to ramp him up slowly. Now they got the Giants tomorrow and joint practices on back-to-back days. I don't know if he'll be out there doing that stuff. He'll be probably doing team, positional, individual drills, and then gradually work him up to team. They've made it very clear that it's a long-term plan for Johnson. They don't want to rush him back too quickly. He is a very important part of their defense. Their defensive line is not as deep as it used to be. So they need him and Will McDonald to be their starting edge players. And I certainly think he will be in week 1.
All right, so a couple of things that were a problem last year on the defensive side: run defense and penalties, which was, I guess, a whole team thing. But where do you see them at, especially with the run defense early on here?
Yeah, I mean, they look great the other night in the limited action they got. The penalties is another story. I mean, It's been kind of an issue through training camp. I mean, we saw that scrimmage, intra-squad scrimmage, a little over a week ago where there was a ton of flags. That was mostly an offensive penalty day. On Saturday night against Green Bay, it was just a ton of defensive penalties and personal fouls, too. This just dumb penalties. I mean, Michael Clemens, it took him about 8 minutes into the season before he got his first fight. Right. That just drives Aaron Glenn crazy, and I understand why. There's just unnecessary. So that's going to be a continuing issue. They vowed to clean it up. We'll see. And the run defense, I think it'll be better than last year. I think a lot of last year's was scheme related. Robert Saleh's defense is built more to rush the passer. And when they have to get down and dirty and play the run on a down-to-down basis, especially when you're trailing in a game, it's not conducive to doing that. And I think Byron Cowart, who was having a really good camp before he hurt his ankle, I think is going to be the starting defensive tackle next to Quinnen Williams. And the guy who stole the show the other night, Jay Tufele, who not many fans know about, and comes in and has a fantastic game. So he'll be on the team. He'll be in that rotation. And so it is a question, but I do think scheme will cover up some of their deficiencies that showed up last year.
All right, so we're getting closer. I think it's about 25 days or something until the season opens. It's hard to have that surprise X factor anymore with the amount of coverage and everybody focusing on every team. Has there been one guy during the course of camp where you say, oh, we've got to kind of keep an eye on him that Jet fans might not be thinking of at this point?
Let me reach for my depth chart here. I know I have it. So here it is.
Yeah.
The guy, I'll give you okay, here's a guy on defense, I'll give you, he got a big contract, Brandon Stevens, 3 years, $36 million. I think a lot of Jet fans were like, what? This guy is not very good. He was the weak link in the Baltimore secondary. I had a Baltimore official call me when the Jets signed Brandon Stevens. He texted me and he goes, what are they doing? Do they realize what they just signed? Now, he's been really good in camp. I'll give him credit. Justin Fields, Glenn came out and said he's been one of their most improved players. And so that's been a guy that's been a pleasant surprise, I think. I think on offense, there haven't been really – Braylon Allen has looked really good again. And you saw it the other night. He's going to get a share of the carries. Now, is he going to get more carries than Breece Hall? I don't think so, but they've made it very clear that they want to use all three running backs. Braylon Allen, he's 240 pounds, and he can move downhill. You saw it on that run the other night. He is what they want to be on offense, just like a power running team. So he's one guy that's jumped out to me on offense.
Yeah, thinking about the running game, it seems like every year the Jets have like 5 running backs at this point of the season where you're like, oh, this guy's pretty good. This guy's pretty good. Where do you see the running back breakdown being for them this year with Braylon Allen, who looked like a factor at times last year, and the run game, especially with Breece Hall, just didn't seem like the same guy last year?
No, there were a lot of factors. Number one, they didn't run the ball last year. They were last in the league in rushing attempts. And so I think a lot of that was on Aaron Rodgers and the coaches catering to him, letting him throw the ball. And a lot of it was Rodgers checking out of plays to throw the ball, especially in the red zone. The Jets were by far the most pass-happy team in the red zone than any team in the league. So I think that will change. Now, the breakdown, of course, this is a huge fantasy issue. I know fantasy owners want that. I just finished doing something for ESPN.com on this very issue. Braylon Allen had, I think, 28% of the running back carries last year. I think that number will go up. Breece Hall had about 200 carries last year. I could see that number coming down a little bit, but he will get touches. They are going to make a concerted effort to try to get him the ball as a receiver in space. Now, they say they're going to split him out. I did a lot of research into those numbers. He does split out a fair amount, splitting out wide as a wide receiver he does do that a fair amount, but there are other backs in the league who do it more, like Bijan Robinson and Rachaad White. So I think the Jets are going to try to increase that number, using him if they go empty, putting him out. He can do it. Now, he didn't have a great year last year. You're right, Gordon. He had 6 drop passes. I think he had 3 or 4 fumbles. So some of that was on him. And I think he will be highly motivated. It's the last year of his contract. He's not going to get an extension this season from the Jets. So he's going to have to – this is like an earn-it year for him. So I think he'll be highly motivated.
All right, so we're at this point of camp, and the optimism is always going to be through the roof, especially with a new head coach. I was listening to The Fan the other day. Somebody called after the first preseason game we've got our coach. They know right now.
Right.
What would you say, not to put a number on it, but what would you say is a fair expectation? Is it 7 wins? Is it 8 wins? What would you think is a fair expectation for year one of a new regime and a new coach?
I think 7 wins.
Yeah.
That's what I'm at, 7-10 right now. Maybe I'll adjust based on what I see in the preseason, but right now I'm at 7-10. I think they do not have as much talent on paper as they did last year. However, I think they will get more out of what they have than what they did last year. Last year was an unmitigated disaster. It was 5-12 with a Hall of Fame quarterback and a Hall of Fame receiver, and I don't really want to go back to that. It was a disaster. They were just an unmotivated, undisciplined team that just never played well together. And so this year, I think they'll be cohesive. I think they'll be more disciplined. I think they'll be tougher physically and mentally. Last year's team was soft in every way imaginable. And this year's team, I think, will be tougher, even mentally. Last year, they gave away 6 games in the fourth quarter. I think that will improve. But I do think there's a ceiling just because their talent is lacking in certain areas. I mean, Justin Fields is a question mark. They're very thin in several positions, including, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, linebacker. They're all thin in those areas. So if they get hit with some injuries, it's going to really hurt. But I do think they are heading in the right direction. And you're talking about an inexperienced head coach, too. I think he shows a world of promise, but he's never done it before. The OC has never done it before. So there's going to be some growing pains on offense. So when you put it all together, I think 7-10 feels about right now.
Rich, thanks so much. Hopefully, for a change, you're going to have a season that extends beyond Halloween. These last, it has to have been. You had to have had over the last dozen years times where you're thinking to yourself, "Oh boy, here we go again."
Yeah, well, hopefully, I'm not writing about the 26th draft around October 31st.
That's never a good sign when you're Googling the 2026 mock draft. That's never a good sign.
Never a good sign, but we've done that in the past, and hopefully they playing meaningful games in December.
Thanks, Rich.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've watched or listened this long, please hit that subscribe button, like it, rate it, share it with a friend. It really does help out. And we'll be back next time right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.